So if you've ever worked on the Auburn HPC clusters, or you've attended our fundamentals class where we kind of walk you through the basics, you probably saw, the old school ways to do a shell script development. There are text editors you can use at the command line, like VI, for example, something like this. Now that's convenient and it helps you out when you're working in the command line and you just need to do something quick. But it's not a great environment. It's a little bit clunky when you're going to do something that's more involved. You want to do maybe a shell script that involves some more advanced methods like loops or different types of way to break up your data, or you want to automate some things, and so your script's going to be a pretty long script, and maybe you don't quite know exactly the best ways to do it, and so some auto correct or some auto typing things, some documentation about the language, the bash shell, might assist you. Different features that are in modern tools that you can use that aren't available at the command line, and some common integrated development environments or IDEs. That basically means it's a software tool that brings in features and different methods for writing code in various languages. And some of the more common ones that are available today that for the vast majority of the time are cross-platform or at least freely available, ubiquitous, are VSCode. You may have used PyCharm. If you're on a Mac, you might have used Xcode, which is that one is platform dependent. You can only use that on a Mac. And then you have some IDEs, quote unquote IDEs, that are really more of like, text editors on steroids, like Sublime Text or Notepad++ on Windows. And then some of the older ones like Eclipse or NetBeans that really kind of laid the foundational work for what you see in the modern IDEs. But today we're going to focus on what I have seen as a real common one that people are excited about, and that's Microsoft's Visual Studio Code, which is a free integrated development environment software package that runs on Mac, Windows, Linux, and it provides probably its most powerful feature is the extensibility. So you get a lot of great built-in features from Microsoft, but when you want to do that sort of weird thing with that custom shell you're using, maybe somebody has an extension you can bring in and incorporate into that IDE that adds different types of features. Now with that capability also comes some concerns. So we'll talk a little bit about some things to consider when you're looking at extending Visual Studio Code. But it's I think going to be, if you're not already familiar with it, probably worth your while to take a look and play around with it and see how you can learn it and see what it can do. So here's some links that might be of interest to you. You got the documentation there. And if you were just to kind of browse through that, there are, like a quick start tutorial, different types of things that might help you get going. And I'll also walk you through, what I have done, what I normally do to set up a sort of an initial, what they call a workspace in Visual Studio Code. But you can access the documentation and all the great content that Microsoft has available. And I'm not being sarcastic. They do have great content on this and lots of helpful different types of guides that you can use. But I wanted to look and see if they've got some information on the basic concepts. And I didn't take time to do that beforehand, so I might just bail and go on to my slides. So yeah, they got videos, tips and tricks, and don't see conceptual guide. But what I'll do is just go over it and explain it in my own words. So back to the slides. These are kind of handy, these cheat sheets. If I can get it to open, you can print these things out, stick them on your wall. But these are the sort of keyboard shortcuts that might come in handy. Another thing about Visual Studio Code that while it is full featured, I think there are like 10,000 different types of configuration options, and every time you add an extension, it adds 1,000 more, so it can be a bit overwhelming. Start simple and work your way up, but just know that there's a reason for that, because they have that granularity in the configuration and so many different options. It really gives you a lot of flexibility into what you're trying to do. It's very much a developer somebody who actually is writing maybe even enterprise grade type applications. And so you have to find the balance between I'm just doing some scripting for running HPC jobs versus a full-fledged, uh, uh, software lifecycle development type thing. But that flexibility is there. We'll talk about extensions, and there's a marketplace for extensions that might be of interest. You could browse around, see if you can find things. There's also a way to browse it in the program itself. And what we've done today, as a holiday gift for you guys, we have created our pre-alpha untested version of an AUHPC workspace, which I will demonstrate and potentially, we may be able to get and see if anybody has success using that. It's a very early phase, but it was the best way I could find to try to see if we can, bootstrap our research community with a Visual Studio workspace that has all the tools, the basic components that you need for shell script development. So I can walk you through just playing this video here on the basic installation. And this is pretty typical. You've probably done this before, but you're going to go to the website, click on the download link, and then open the folder and run the executable. The vast majority of the time, you can just take the defaults when you run that executable, and that's just going to install Visual Studio Code for you. Pretty quick and easy install, and then once you do, it should show up in your applications, and you can launch it. Now, the first thing you'll see, and when you launch is you got some strange looking icons, and if you're not familiar with IDEs, you might not even know where to go. So VS Code sort of tries to help you, like, hey, what do you want to do? This is the first time you run VS Code. Here are some options you might want to look into. But what you should probably conceptually understand is that there's a hierarchical sort of way that they do this. You have the software itself, which is VS Code, and that software has its own configuration settings. That's what's called a user level configuration setting. And those are defined globally at the very top. And if you define settings there, they'll be your defaults throughout your work, but you can also define the same settings at a lower level, and that's called a workspace. Now, a workspace is really sort of equivalent in my mind to a project. You would only create new workspaces really if it made sense to logically group the code and data for a particular project separately from others. And so you may have many workspaces, you may only have one as you're working with AUHPC. But when you create that workspace, you have then the ability to override any of the settings that are defined at the higher level user level. So that hierarchy, and while it's a short hierarchy or a shallow hierarchy, is important to note. And you can see when you go into VS Code, if you've had luck installing it there are many, many different types of settings. So what I'm going to do first is put this in screencast mode so you guys can see the key commands I'm typing. But that also may cause some weirdness. So, and with that on, it should be Control Shift P. And that brings up basically every command you could possibly run in VS Code. So a command is, well, it's sort of like what you would run at a shell on HPC. It performs a task. Some of them require arguments, some of them don't. And this is a list of them, and you can search it. So in this case, I want to look for settings. And you can see, look, we've got workspace settings and user settings, similar to what I described. When you look at the user settings, you get lots of them, So, I mean, look at that. It seems completely unmanageable, but they do provide some ways to search through it. If I was interested in an example about files, maybe I'll search for files. And it gives me a filtered list of all the settings that are related to files. As mentioned in that hierarchy, you can override these things. So again, we're at the user level, but look here. There's another little tab, and that says workspace. So if you go into workspace, you see just about the same list of settings, slightly different perhaps. But if I change things here at the workspace level, I'm going to override what was defined at the user level. And, some things make sense to define at the user level. Some things make sense to define at the workspace level. If, for instance, you want to change the font or something, the color of the font for every workspace that you use, you would want to do that at the user level and then leave it alone here. But if you had a special need, maybe for a certain connection string to a server or something that needs to be defined in a setting, but you don't really want that available for every project you're going to potentially use, you would define that at the workspace level. So important to note that hierarchy there. And you also have settings at the folder level, but those start to get minimal. And the folder is really the last level in the hierarchy, which is when you create a workspace, you can add folders from your file system in the workspace. Here I have this code folder, and I have a single file, shell.sh, in there. So we walked through that video for the installation, and once you've installed it, we'll walk through this video real quick too. Again, we're going to load VS Code, and it's going to say, hey, this is the first time you've run that. What do you want to do? And maybe we read through the list, but really, you know what? Thanks, but we'll just try it on our own. So we're going to mark this as done. Let's say mark done, and you can get it back later if you want. But now it's got a different welcome page, and it's saying, hey, you don't have any folders open. So really, the simplest way to create a new workspace is to launch VS Code and add a folder, and then save that workspace as a workspace file. So here we're going to add this folder in our documents folder, AUHPC. This is just an example. You can call it whatever you want, put it wherever you want. And you can see now it's got a folder that's in our workspace, but our workspace says it's untitled. And that to me is an indication that we haven't really saved the settings for this workspace. So we're going to do that real quick. We'll say save workspace as, and wherever we choose to put it. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and create a new folder as well to hold all. I might create a whole bunch of different workspaces. So I want to keep those separate from my code. I'm going to create a new folder here that holds my workspace files. I call it vsc.workspaces, and then I'm going to select that. And then my file name down there at the bottom, I've chosen auhpc.code-workspace. Now, once you save it, that sort of commits your settings to a file. Without saving it, really, that's recommended. My recommendation is to one of the first things you do, save your workspace to a file, because if you start modifying configurations without actually saving the workspace to a file, I've seen where you can lose those settings or things just really get weird. So in this case, we've created the workspace, we've created a new folder, and now I don't know if you saw that happen kind of quickly. Let me get this out of the way. What I did was I went over there on that sidebar, and I think this thing walked through some shortcuts, maybe not. On that sidebar, I'm going to choose to create a new file. I think is what I'm trying to get at. I'm going to create a new file here shortly. Yep. So right click, new file, and then just give it a name. In this case, shell.sh. And there you have really your bare bones VS Code workspace, and then you can begin, coding around. So a very simple script here. Always start with the shebang line, bin bash, and hello world. Now notice right off the bat, you're probably saying, hey, this is a lot easier than VI or Nano. I can, do all the fancy things that a point and click GUI can do. It's fast, it's responsive. And so that in itself may be beneficial for some of you, right? But what if we do a whole bunch of work here and we're on our local machine, but obviously we need to get this thing onto easily. We need to get it on the HPC cluster. And so what can we do to help us get, I guess maybe some semblance of a remote development is what they call it, a workspace, where we can actually connect to easily, look at our files in our home directory or our scratch directory, open those files, modify them, save them without having to do an SCP back and forth, so on and so forth. And so that AUHPC profile holiday gift that I mentioned is our attempt at trying to help automate that. We've had 2 out of 3 this morning of the HPC admins. And matter of fact, I think we have 3 out of 3 with a little get it working. But I'm just going to walk you through how it should work, and we'll see if I can squash any bugs. For now, I'm going to take just a short break to kind of get a sip of water. But while we're doing that, I'm going to try to review the poll. But if you have any questions, you can drop them in the chat, and feel free to do that. I'll try to field them. hopefully we can, after this next session, walking through that profile, we can open it up for discussion. I learn best just by hands-on, you know, so getting in and trying and failing a bunch. And certainly I am by no means an expert in VS Code, but I have been using it a lot more and more lately, and I've found it, you know, keep going back to it as a handy tool. So, all right, well, let me just bring up, 1 second. I'm going to bring up the, so I've got a Windows virtual machine here. Now, I normally use VS Code on Mac, and that's, I mean, it looks pretty much the same, right? So here's the Mac version. But I think most of our users, I may be wrong about this, most of our researchers are Windows folks. So, and you're trying to keep it, you know, best common denominator. I went with a Windows VM and set up VS Code here. And I learned a little bit in the process doing that, the differences. But so yeah, okay, so use Mac. I can walk this. The same concepts either way. It's nothing different there in terms of the actual architecture, the software architecture. So again, you got this. Let's just briefly talk about the UI here. You launch VS Code, and then by default, you probably don't have anything, and you get that alert about, hey, you don't have a folder open. So once you get your workspace saved and your folder open, you'll see that you got a workspace disclosure box here. Now, on that left side where it says Explorer, that's what's called your sidebar. It's the primary sidebar. Now, this would be useful down the road. If I do a Control key B, that toggles the sidebar visibility. Now, I don't know where I think I lost my screencast stuff. So I'm going to turn that back on. All right. Should be good now. Control Shift A. Now you can see what I'm typing. So that's show all commands. But again, the toggle Control B, toggle primary sidebar. There's also a secondary sidebar. And to do that, you would do a Control Shift B, I think. No, it's Control, maybe Alt B. Yeah, no, it's primary. There we go. Secondary sidebar, Control Alt B. All right, so you see on the right side there's no quote unquote views in there, and we can add those. And we can put just about anything we want in there. There's lots of different types of views, but that hides and shows the secondary sidebar. And then this one is very important. You're going to like this. So you've got an SSH client, right? Would it be nice if you didn't ever have to leave VS Code and you could use an SSH client from VS Code? Well, sure. You got this thing called the panel, and you can show and hide the panel with Control J. And then by default on Windows, you get a couple of different options. Now on Mac, you get a bash option or a ZSH option, but by default, I think PowerShell is what loads in your terminal on a Windows device. And you can see hey, look at there. I've got a terminal now. Well, can I SSH to easily? Yeah, I think so. Easily. And yeah, well, it's asking me for my password though. So that's, you know, at least an indication that I can connect. But in an environment where I constantly need to be maybe working remotely, there's something called a shared key authentication, that's supposed to be automated by that AUHPC profile. We'll get into that. But back to your question, Joseph. The reason I demonstrated those shortcuts is because I wanted to be able to show and hide this Explorer as an indication. You're in the File Explorer here. You got your workspace. Underneath the workspace, you have folders that you've added. And then underneath those folders, you have various files or perhaps subfolders. You have a set of configuration items that apply to the workspace. And then you have a set of configuration items that apply to I guess this is where I would point for the application. And to illustrate that again, if I go into File, Preferences, and Settings, all right? So File Preferences is, I think, in Windows where you normally kind of find your application settings. It's going to bring up in my editor view this settings. It's not a file. It's sort of I don't know what you'd call it. I guess you'd call it a view. But you can see that when I do that, it's showing me this list of settings, but it has these tabs. It has user, workspace, and code. And I'm trying to think of a good example. I think the example I use for when you want to use a user level setting of visual type things, you know, what color, what's your font, you know, what fonts you like, maybe the size of your fonts, uh, different variations, those types of UI type things make sense to me to put in the user level config. But on the workspace front, I correlate workspace with a project. So for example, if I had a research project where I was looking at catfish genomes and all of the, you know, data that I needed for that research project and the scripts that I'm using to run my workload on that or at least loosely dependent or related to one another, I'm going to probably create a workspace and then add a folder in that workspace that holds all of that research project specific data. So I'm going to use VS Code, that's my application level, to create a workspace, which is my project level, and then folders and or subfolders underneath that workspace to hold, maybe I've got a data folder, maybe I've got a scripts folder, so on and so forth. So it's really just a way to logically group and abstract the types of files, or just can logically group them is really more into categories. So again, at the user level, maybe UI type settings make sense. And then at the workspace level, things like, okay, if it's a catfish genome type thing, well, maybe I've got a specific data processing tool or a script that I'm working on that's using Python, right? And so in that workspace, I want to enable certain Python related features. Now, if I also have another research project I'm working on, and it's all this old school C code. It doesn't use any Python or anything like that. So I might define another workspace to hold the folders and files that I use for that project. But I'm not going to enable any of the Python capabilities. Instead, I'm going to enable the features that are related to C++ or whatever it is I'm doing in that arbitrary project that are specific to that. You know, you don't necessarily want to turn on a whole bunch of features at the user level and then have it applied to everything you run, because it's not efficient. It could lead to security issues, so on and so forth. And just in the interest of, keeping things simple, you want to kind of be as minimal as you can at that user level, and then be more specific at the workspace level. Joseph, does that answer your question at all? I tried, man.
No, that makes sense about the different levels of settings. My question was more about what makes something a workspace. Is that just the top level folder that you have open in VS Code, or is it is there something special about that folder, kind of like a Git repository where it's got a special file in it or something that makes it a workspace?
That's a fantastic question, and I think it's probably key a key thing to understanding it. Yes. So if you'll notice under the file menu, when we say to save a workspace, you can save this workspace as, and the default extension is code.workspace. Now that in itself will associate the workspace with the VS Code application through extension associations. But good question on what really makes it a workspace. And the answer to that is, when you start defining settings at the workspace level, it's going to create a hidden folder, or, it's not necessarily hidden if you've got hidden folders shown. It'll create a folder called .vscode underneath this folder that you've brought in the workspace that has, perhaps .settings. If you look at that workspace file, for example, it's a JSON file that contains configuration items. So let's take a look at it. I'm going to cd to AUHPC .AUHPC. And then I've got a VS Code folder. There's that workspace file, AUHPC code.workspace. Let's take a look at it. That's what it looks like, if you can see it. And this, I feel like this kind of answers your question, at least at the code level. This is what makes a workspace a workspace. And all of these different configuration items that define what it's supposed to do when it loads.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
You bet. And then you look, here's where you can actually, and anytime you see these, you can modify these if you're comfortable with JSON. You don't have to use this that GUI settings view. You can go in here and code it in yourself. And just about everything that VS Code does, you can do that. You can change the settings. There, everything has a code level background that's usually manipulated. It can be manipulated at the code level, and they provide some convenience tools that are GUI based tools to do it. So it's your preference, really. All right, then. Well, moving on from that, and thank you for that question. I think it cleared up a lot, maybe for some folks. I'm going to attempt to do this beta version of a AUHPC profile that we had. So I'm going to take that link that I had in the slides there, and it downloads that. Look, there's that same file name. Let's take a look at it. So this is in my downloads folder. If I double click that, what's going to happen? Well, it brings up a VS Code window, but it's saying, hey, you might have got this workspace from somewhere I don't recognize. You sure you want to use this thing? Well, because you know that the AUHPC admins have your back, we would never do anything but malicious. We'll say we trust the authors. Perhaps we could get some code signing here in place, but again, beta version. So I'm going to say yes, I trust the authors. Don't ever, I don't want to give the impression you should ever do that lightly. But in this case, I'm pretty sure I know where that file came from. Now, if you look again if you were to look in that VS Code workspace, you'll see some things called tasks. So again, I'm going to turn on my screencast mode. Now that I've reloaded it, it's off again. But I'm going to do that Control-Shift-P, show all commands. And I'm going to type in tasks. All right. So inside that AUHPC profile, I guess, or VS Code workspace, there are some tasks built in. And I'm going to choose this option, run tasks. Now, when I do that, there are those magic AUHPC tasks. And it's not very apparent, but there's a certain order you should run these in. We didn't quite get to the point where we automated it fully. The first thing I want to run is initialize workspace. So I'm going to do that. And it's going to ask me, hey, what is the HPC project path? Well, I had that home code folder. I could put it, if I knew the path, anything, I could put anything in here. I'm just going to go ahead and use that. And so you see it runs these commands in the background. I didn't get any errors, presumably. So it says, hey, I'm done. You can close this by hitting a key. All right, so I've got another task to run. I'll run task again. And the second step is to start setting up that public key auth. And that would be generate a local SSH key. What this is going to do is use a tool to generate an asymmetric cryptographic key set. So you get a public key and a private key. It says it completed fine there. So we have a new key that we've created that's been generated on our local machine. And what you can do is actually take that key now and put it in your home directory on easily as an authorized key. And so you got another task to do that, and that is copy public key to easily. All right, so let's do that. Click it. It's prompting me for a username because on your local workstation, you may not be logged in as your Auburn ID. So it's hard for me to know, and I can't really scoop it from the OS. It does use the Windows default, but what we've seen this morning is that those are sometimes in all caps, and Linux doesn't like that. So for now, we've just got to deal with having to type our username in until we can find a better solution. I'm going to type mine in. And what it's doing is saying, okay, I'm going to execute this task, which means I have to secure shell to easily using this username. And I'm going to append what's in my public key. So right here, this key that was created in that second task we ran, I'm going to append that to my authorized keys file. Now, in order to do that, we've got to log in. But the good news is we really should, if we do it correctly, only have to do this one time when we're setting it up. So I'm going to go ahead and log in with my info. Of course, I use a 255 character password, as everybody does. And then it's going to prompt me for Duo. If that all goes well, then it should log me in and copy that file for me. All right, let's see. It didn't throw an error. It didn't really tell me it did anything either. So I have one more. It's more of a task that you can run, which is SSH to easily. And when I run this, after I complete these steps in order, these three, this should let me log in easily without a password prompt. I have to give it my username again. And look at there. I have now set up shared key access with Easily. Well, that's great. Well, what else can we do? All right, so what we did was we added an extension to this profile called SSHFS. And that extension allows you to add remote folders on the cluster to your workspace. And you do that, you can do it multiple ways. One, you can do this Shift Control P, show all commands. You can say SSHFS. I'll show you the extension stuff here in a second, but you can see there's some things you can do, and one of them is add as a workspace folder, or you can go over here to this little icon if you see it, click on this Easily AUHPC and click on the add folder button. All right, so it's asking me for my username again. And look at there. It's at least trying to add it. Let's see. Are we going to have success here? It's trying. Oh, it wants my username again. I don't know why it's doing that. There it goes. All right. And so now, after following those, downloading that profile, following those tasks in the order that I mentioned there, which should be more apparent and probably not even necessary once we get it to a better point. But for now, again, beta version. It set up shared key authentication to Easily for us, and it configured a extension called SSHFS, which allows us to mount that home directory in our workspace. And so now this is great. I've got all my files that are on Easily, and if I have maybe a job script or something that I wanted to edit, let's look down in our old favorite prime directory at the old prime.sh script, which is in here somewhere, I think. Yeah, prime.sh. And now look, so that's the script that lives on Easily, and I can edit it in this full-featured editor and do all the things that a modern editor can do, like, you know, finding strings using a GUI, search and replace. There are all sorts of features, more advanced features like code snippets. For instance, maybe it'd be a good idea. We always have to, whenever we create a job script, we pretty much want to include these SBatch things. So why not create a snippet where we can type in just maybe a couple characters and it just does this for us, so on and so forth. So that's where I got with the time I had for this meeting in terms of how something might make sense for a Auburn researcher that wants to do scripting on the Easily cluster, or any cluster really. And if, at least in my case, you know, you saw that at least the idea of it is, how can we sort of help bootstrap and create in a VS Code workspace that allow you to do those things? And hopefully some of the conceptual stuff was kind of grokked in the process. But I did mention extensions. I want to cover that real quick. So extensions, a powerful feature of VS Code. With that power comes some risk, because, you know, the extension marketplace, in my opinion, it's like the Wild West. You know, you've got very reputable companies and developer services that develop and maintain VS Code extensions, but you have potentially some bad actors that are doing it as well. So I would highly encourage you, and this was my concern when I first saw it, all sorts of opportunity for side channel attacks and supply chain attacks for people who, you know, are using, you know, if I'm a you know, hacker with bad intent, perhaps, I'm looking for people that might have at least some useful data or access into systems, and people that are using tools like VS Code are probably people that have, you know, development interests that might have access into system, things like that. Hope I'm not giving you guys ideas. Maybe I'm thinking about developing a malicious extension, and I don't think Microsoft does a very thorough vetting process for a lot of these. So what you can look at, and in case of this one that we installed, this SSHFS, all right, well, right off the bat, I'm a little suspicious of this one. It looks like an independent developer. He's not a certified developer, because if he were, he'd have a little blue icon, kind of like what you see on what you see on Twitter, where someone's been approved by the service. So Microsoft will give you a little blue badge if you meet their requirements for a developer. So he's not even approved, and he's an independent developer, presumably. But this does have 503,000 installs. and it's got good ratings. If we really wanted to dig further, because we got to be careful, especially when we're doing things like remoting, right? You don't want to run any risk that you can lose data on the cluster, things like that, or drop something potentially malicious in your home directory that would be bad for not only you but potentially a lot of other people. So let's give it a thorough look, and we can navigate to the marketplace and review the various things that the author has provided. But most importantly, there are links to actually right here from the actual code itself. And so if you really wanted to get thorough, you could look through this code and say, do I see anything that might raise an alarm? The other thing that I mentioned with the number of downloads and users of the extension, the more people that are using it, or the more people that have eyes on it. And so a group of 500,000 folks is a reasonable sized group that you've got some eyes on this, right? If there were a problem where somebody knows something, you'd probably have a pretty good support team to say, hey, I'm seeing some red flags here. So I know I'm probably going on a little bit too long about this, but be careful, be minimalistic about the extensions you install. Nice thing about it is you can always quickly enable them and disable them. Now, when you start looking into VS Code and SSH, for instance, if you come into the extension marketplace and you type in SSH, the first thing that's going to come up is this remote.ssh. And look at this one. Well, I mean, you can't get any more reputable than that. It's the same company that developed VS Code. They're approved. There's 18 million, almost 19 million downloads of the thing. Why didn't we choose this one? Why are we using this independent developer SSHFS? Well, I'll tell you. And this was, in my opinion, was a very bad design choice by Microsoft. If you look at the documentation for this project, you will notice that when you use this extension and you give it a host with credentials to connect to, and it can authenticate, it will actually install a VS Code server product in your home directory, and every time you log in, it will attempt to spin that up. Now, why they chose to do that, I think they were trying to make remote debugging work, quite well, and that's great and all, but why not be explicit about it? And hey, give me the option. Do you want to spin up a node.js thing on this remote server that perhaps is very important? In our case, it's a HPC cluster and multi-user environment. And if we all went out and installed Visual Studio Code and enabled this extension, we'd have 500 instances of node.js running on the login node. Most of us would be completely oblivious to it because Microsoft was nice enough to just do it in the background without tell us anything. So that's why I avoided using this one. We have seen some issues with this particular extension. And in this case, oddly enough, it's from a very reputable source. But Mr. Scoofs, in my opinion, did a better job of implementing it. So this is the one I recommend. It's much lighter weight. There are still some weird .VS Code artifacts. It drops in your home directory, but it's not nearly as much overhead. So all sorts of things. So for example, we're interested in some Slurm stuff, right? Maybe they got some Slurm extensions. Well, they have a couple. Here's a syntax highlighter. Here's a tool to help manage Slurm job. Yeah, who knows who this guy is? It doesn't have a lot of downloads, but hey, if we can look at the code and we can confirm it looks okay, maybe we want to look into it. And then of course, we're going to be doing some bash scripting. So we've got lots of different bash tools that we can use. Another thing that's important, if you're familiar with version control, things like Git, you have an account on GitHub, so on and so forth. And if you are working in a lab that's collaborating on code, there are very nice Git integration source controls, what they call it, features built into VS Code. As a matter of fact, one of the options when you create a workspace is just to say clone a repository. VS Code will go out to, if it's a remote repository like GitHub, bring that down, create a workspace for you, and they'll track all the changes, make it easy for you to sync, pull, push, do all that stuff right there from within the GUI. So I think at this point, and I did all right. We're going to 11:30 today, I think, for those who can stick around. I think I'm going to wrap up my demonstration portion. I'll go back to the slides, and I'm not sure if any of you were able to do it or want to try to do it, but we do have that profile available if you want to give it a shot. However, if we get 100 support requests with people saying, hey, the profile doesn't work, well, we'll probably end up just having to go back to the drawing board. So I'm going to wrap it up here and open it up for questions or comments from the group. Okay. Well, if there are no questions or comments, let's go through this closing slide. You can get our HPC documentation at aub.ie/HPC docs. That's just general cluster usage. And again, the best email address to send support requests, feedback, everything HPC related is hpcadmin@auburn.edu. We just ask that when you do send a support request, don't just send, hey, my job didn't run. It takes us forever to try to figure out what job you're talking about, what path. The more detail you can include, the faster we can get back to you. Easier it makes it for everybody. And then we're also glad to do direct support calls for those of you that have very specific questions or things that are a little more involved that aren't best done through email. We do that quite often. We've had some great success with some labs. Recently, we were able to get a lab that had jobs that were running for many, many days to run within a matter of hours just by looking at their workload, finding ways to break the data and parallelize the workload. So, hey, we want to help you guys. We want you guys to make great discoveries, and we want to, at least reduce that technical overhead for you. So let us know how we can help. And with that, I'm going to stop my share, and I'll extend the offer for questions, comments, feedback once again. But if nobody wants to ask anything, they're probably either just completely underwhelmed by what I've just presented, or maybe I just did a terrible job presenting it and they're confused. But hey, look, we got to collaborate. We got a community here, and yeah, let's it'd be nice to get a conversation going. So if you have any comments, I'll open up the mics. Otherwise, y'all have a good day.
Yeah, Bradley, I thought it was great. The light bulbs are starting to go off. This is Jeff Stahl. We're talking, and I have been playing the role of problem pupil today. But I've got most of it working there. But I am going to have some questions there. Yeah, I think it's great. It's starting to click to me as somebody who has used just regular notepad or whatever, created scripts, doing a lot of cutting and pasting from shell windows. I mean, my standard practice has been, oh, well, yeah, I was working on that script there. I think I'll just nano the file name in my home directory and paste to it. So this is going to be, it's going to be good when I get it set up and start using it.
Well, we've got some time, Jeff. I mean, if you're willing, we could try to, and it might be helpful for some other folks on the call. They might be having the same maybe bugs or problems that we're working out. We could try to troubleshoot your workspace. If not,
yeah, that's fine. Everything looking good, I think. And just I need to go back and watch the videos. And with something like this, because you pointed out at the beginning, there are some very, very simple conceptual videos, but I think the conversation between you and Joseph about the workspace that was very helpful, especially when you showed the underlying code, where it lived, how you could modify it, where you might use different, the concept of folders where you're just saying, yes, I have this kind of code or this kind of code, or I want to keep a data folder, a code folder, scripts folder, whatever. That's great. Yeah, I'm happy to show you the issue I'm having if you just want to see it.
Let's do it. Live from Auburn, troubleshooting without a net. Let's do it.
Okay. Of course. And, I have the worst practice of I just share my whole screen. So actually, well, that's a different thing. That's a different machine. So, okay, so let's go here, get out of probably all the junk I've got there. You see my environment there.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see if I can get this thing out of the way a little bit or whatever. So I had, you were talking about using the extensions I've got there. So let's see, I've got to get back there. So this is that, when I wanted to add that space where you actually said, I want to be in Easily. I've done everything. I've gotten logged into Easily there, or
Yep,
was.
got your shared key working, and that's the key for that SSHFS extension. When you click that little folder there, that's actually that was added when you installed, or when the profile installed the SSHFS extension.
Okay, so I'm there now. So now I want to actually show my home directory or whatever on Easily.
Yeah. So you click that folder,
right? And this is where I get
okay. So it says that
issue
key
here.
file. Yeah, it says, hey, I can't read the key file.
Okay, so I'm in my environment here.
Okay.
So if and it's saying it's in AUHPC, so.
Well, yeah, and it's at / So, I don't know if that path makes sense to Windows. Let me see what I have.
So then there's the .AUHPC, HPC, further in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I have some files out there, and it's looking for AUHPC.ID, which I have that. So
I'm wondering if it's a pathing issue. Doesn't Windows use the C? Is it the fact that we didn't use C:\/ perhaps, or something like that? What do I have in the profile that I used to work? That worked. Let me look at that. But you see what I'm saying? It's something like that we're missing there. And fortunately, the nice thing about it is, let's do this. Type in your Shift Control P. And choose preferences, open workspace. Oh, wait, no, excuse me. Open, workspace settings, JSON. All right. So instead of having to use the GUI with the save button and everything, we can just go ahead and keep trying and failing here, right? This is probably a better way to try and fail. And so we can put things, in this case, home should, it's almost like $home is not resolving for you, because it only says /AUHPC, right?
Can I do that? Will that work?
Yeah, type in extra $. That should work. That's interesting, because we have that private key path defined as $home AUHPC blah. But SSHFS is saying, no, I'm looking at / AUHPC. So that doesn't, that doesn't.
Is there any kind of configuration in here that?
Yeah, let's take a look in there and see if it matches. At the bottom, you should, or near the bottom, you should see, I think you went past it. There it is. Yeah. So, and it says right there, look, hey, it supports environment variables like $home. For whatever reason, it just seems like it's not prep-ending that path with what it needs to do. Let me just make sure that we have the right quoting and everything. Sometimes it's very simple things like you put the quotes in the wrong place, the wrong type of quotes, so on and so forth. Anybody? Well, let's open it up to the group. Anybody else got any?
Is it that the / is going the wrong way for Windows?
So that's interesting. That's a very good observation. What I've seen looking at the VSCode docs is that, strangely enough, it's like they mix them. Like they'll use these backslashes for the first part, and I don't know why, but they'll use / for the remaining part. But yeah, it's worth a shot. Why don't we try doing backslashes? Yeah.
If we were to get through this like this, it makes me, in the spirit of the holiday coming up, it would make me want to say, I'm going to have to pull out one of my burned up memory refrigerator magnets that I've made. And we're going to have to see if
we have to give out some door prizes.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking that. So
I'd like to look back at the underlying code just to make sure that the change you made actually happened. So that tab that says AUHPC code workspace at the top right.
See, but you can see right there. See the era right here.
Yeah, well, so it did.
That's the old era. This is the new era.
Okay. Still
Forward
doesn't
slash
have C colon backslash. Well, let's do this. Let's just get explicit with it. For whatever reason, your dollar home doesn't work. Let's just fully path it. The C colon backslash, whatever that path is. It was C colon backslash user stall JB. There in the terminal, you can see it. Now, users does have an uppercase U, so I don't know if that matters on Windows.
Well, yeah.
I think it does on Windows.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So
Good.
user stall JB, and then
Joseph's well on his way to winning that door prize. I'm telling you.
I'm telling you. So AUHPC and then the dot AUHPC.
Yep, because you don't want to make it too simple, right?
And then
I
default.
think you've got a comma instead of a dot, or am I seeing things?
You are not seeing things.
All right.
And then
you're doing this on purpose. I know you're trying to set it up for failure.
And
it was AUHPC.ID. That's the private key. Yeah. So save that. You have to scroll to the bottom. And I just want to illustrate, before you do anything, go up to that tab that's right next to it. The one with the yellow brackets, curly brackets at the top far right tab. Keep going over that. Yes. You should see that has been changed. Now, why it uses the double backslash, hadn't escaped the backslash, I guess because it's JSON. So now, yeah, try and see what happens when you try to add the folder. All right, now it's asking for your password, which means it didn't find the key.
Where are you seeing that?
See that prompt at the top?
It wants me. So
yeah, I don't know why. It shouldn't want the password, right?
No.
Because we have a key to find it. Why did that fail? Well, let's do this. Let's just emulate what's going on in the background there. So go down to your terminal and type in SSH
The C on the private key path is lowercase instead of uppercase. That might be causing the issue.
I noticed that. I assumed Jeff, Jeff's a Windows guy. He knows what he's doing. You see that, Jeff?
Yeah.
Does that matter if the C's lowercase?
The C colon backslash?
Yeah. Well, let's try it and see.
You want me to just change it right here?
Yeah, change it. Make it uppercase.
And save it. Control
S. Control S. Sierra or whatever.
Yeah. Now rerun it.
Yep. Yeah. So it's still on your password. That means it's either not. Well, go ahead and close your errors out and make sure that we're not getting any new errors. So down there at the bottom right, just click the X button. And then we're saved. Hit the escape. Hit escape there. All right. And then one more time, go back over to your configurations on the left. And try that add folder button. All right. So it is still throwing an error. Click on that. It says timed out while waiting for handshake. I think that's probably an old error because we didn't put the password in. Very strange. I don't know what's going on there. Sometimes it's permissions related, like your key file may have the wrong permissions.
Try just hitting enter without entering a password and see what happens.
Worth a shot.
Try one more time.
Hit enter in that prompt. That password prompt, go refocus on that and just hit enter, blank password. Now you are connected to VPN, Jeff?
No, but I'm on a wire.
You're on a wire and you normally can connect without issue, and you have, I think you
yeah. I mean, right now, if you just said like down in here.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it'll probably just log you right in with shared key if you do that. You already had it set up. All right. So type in exit, and we're just going to emulate what SSHFS should be doing. So hit your up arrow. And then go to the beginning after SSH, type in -i. And then C colon backslash and pad it all the way out to that .id file. Users okay. Again with the lowercase c. I think he's doing it on purpose, Joseph. I think he's trying to mess up.
Very nice.
Well, it's no fun if we can't do a little trash talking. AUHPC and then AUHPC.id, right? Space enter. All right, let's start over. Something's wrong with that. Actually, you know what we can do? Control C and go back again to the beginning of your SSH and do a verbosity, triple verbosity, and maybe it'll tell us if it's something with that key that's failing on. No, that won't work. -I is expecting an argument after it, so that you have to go before the -I with the -VBB.
Problem pupil once again. Fire away.
Say you're not doing it on purpose. Yeah, fire away. All right. Now, offering, and they see, look, it says offering public key. C uses blah, 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 blah. Sent the public key. You know what? That's not a public key. That's a private key. So, did I have .pub? I thought it wanted the private key. It said it did.
This could have been some of my manual shenanigans.
Well, it could be, but yeah, I mean, I guess the only thing I would know to do in the interest of trying to get past it would be let's just start over altogether and go through all the tasks. But
we don't want to put everybody through that. I'll go through them again.
Yeah, well, you can real quick just try one more thing. Control C out of that and put .pub on the end of that file. It you know, I don't think it's supposed to do
ID.pub.
Well, actually, no, it is. I think it is. I don't know why SSHFS indicates private key. Try that and see. Yep. It's still prompted for a password, but it looked like we got more output. Offering public key .pub. See packet type 51. I don't know what that means. But it's failing on that key for some reason.
Yep.
Yeah, my only recommendation there, Jeff, would be try to iterate it one more time with a brand new workspace and everything. Start from the very beginning, downloading the re-download the code.workspace file from the link, double click on it, so on and so forth, follow the tasks. And then if you're still having the problem, then yeah, we've got a bug.
Well, being as I was editing the code inside that workspace before we went through it, because I jumped to that too quickly. I probably messed something in your file up.
Beta test, man. It's a great beta tester.
Well,
just out of curiosity, was anybody else able to get it and go through it, or no? I would. Yeah. Let's see. Chris says, yeah, the first time around, Chris, it should ask for your password, but once you get that shared key actually copied out to the cluster, as long as you're using that, valid path to that key, and you have the right, Windows, I don't know what the permissions look like, but if that's a valid key file and a valid path, it should work automatic.
Well, I think if people, because also on this, where I've had the kitchen sink on this workstation before, where I had Windows subsystem for Linux, it threw some errors on that earlier on, and I kept ignoring it. And then I just finally said, well, install whatever you need there. So my Windows subsystem for Linux might be messing with that other SSH piece there. I might have done something.
Possibly, yeah, possibly. I have it installed on mine as well and didn't notice any issue though. Okay. I'm thinking well, I don't even know what it could be actually, because that path obviously exists. And well, what does that file look like? You don't have if what you could do is cat those files, Jeff, and if they don't look like valid keys.
Yeah, I mean, I did the pub file.
Or both of them. You should be able to cat either one of them. And if there's anything at all like an empty file, that would explain it.
No, they look normal. They look. I mean, they have their property formed with an end to open a SSH private key, public key.
And you're sure you've got it in your authorized keys file on easily. That may be another step that failed.
I manually copied it out there. I copied it.
See, well, there you go. That was the problem, Jeff. You manually copied it out there.
No, falling for my trick, my holiday.
You got to control M in that file or something.
Well,
All
yeah,
right,
I actually did. I actually saved it to a file and then I catted it, and appended it to the authorized. Actually, after I wrongly appended it to the known host
all right,
file.
just stop there. Just stop there. I know exactly why it's not working. I won't mention why. No,
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
thanks. I don't
Well,
want to. We're losing the audience here, Jeff. We
well, I
certainly
know
want
it. I know we're going to lose our PG-13 rating because the irreverence that I heard before you opened this call, I've still not gotten over.
well, hey, look, it was all in good fun there. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. I hope you found something useful from the call. Please make sure to reach out to us. And honestly, I'd love to hear feedback if anybody is interested in using that profile, see if they can get a remote workspace set up, how it goes. And well, again, we're just trying to help you guys find different ways to do things more productive ways. So let us know how we can help. You'll have a great weekend.